Welcome to another Canny Conversations podcast episode. I'm absolutely delighted and thrilled to bring somebody who I regard as a role model, somebody who I've seen on stage, who's so passionate, genuine, authentic, and I personally put on record is the best speaker that I've come across. And I'm happy to say that. And because I talk from a personal perspective, he inspires me, motivates many people, including myself, and I regard as a role model for myself because genuine authenticity. Thrilled to invite Derrin Kent, the managing director of the TDM organization and often known as the development manager TDM Limited. So welcome, Derrin. Thank you so much for coming. Much appreciate that.
It's an absolute pleasure, Saf. It's coming right back at you. You're somebody I admire massively. I think what you've inspired with the multiple apprenticeships movement and driving it forwards, and the passion that you've had with Pathway,
I came up to you at the last event that we were there, and I said, you know what you've just said was inspirational. It's memorable. I can't forget it. Let's take the early days really in terms of yourself first before we start talking about the organization, because looking at your LinkedIn profile, looking at your bio, you're an individual who's got a lot of life experience. You've been there, you've done it. You've seen cultures. You understand people. You understand. There's many languages that you speak. 7 languages that I count, probably more now. You love language, you love culture, you love people. So let me push that on your side and just take it from there. No question, but just take it from there.
Yeah. So I'm a product of my life, really, my professional life.
Yeah.
So I went to university, studied education, and I wound up in English as a foreign language teaching. And basically I went to do it as a gap year. For 16 years later, I was still doing it.
Yeah.
And I went around. I just absolutely fell in love with this notion that I love the travel element, but I also really, really enjoyed the professional work of being in a room when people are learning to do something through skills-based practice that they couldn't do before. So a big thing that happened to me in the teaching side, I'll come back to what I learned from being in different countries later, but let's start with what I learned professionally during those first 16 years. When I first started teaching, like many teachers, I assumed that it was my job to kind of explain how language worked.
Okay.
So, this is the grammar, this is the vocabulary, you do your vocabulary, and I'm going to be the big teacher that explains all this stuff. I very quickly learned that actually the way people learn through a foreign language is by being immersed in real tasks.
Okay.
So you need to be speaking to people in that language, you need to be listening to stuff.
Yeah.
And in fact, as you're in the exercise of doing, reading, writing, listening, speaking, doing, as you're in that process, it's the timely interventions from somebody that actually makes you learn. You learn at the moments when people intervene when you need to be able to do something or understand something, not from when people are explaining things to you.
Yeah.
And then you can put a structure around the tasks. So you can set up tasks that drive people into competency spaces that they wouldn't necessarily drive themselves into. So you can do, a guy called Jerome Bruner talks about, so I'll go back a step, there's Lev Vygotsky, who talks about the zone of proximal development, which is this idea that I'm talking about. As you're using a foreign language, it's the timely interventions where the aha moments work.
Okay.
But Jerome Bruner extends that and says, yes, but we can scaffold a sequence of tasks where there's an expectation of learning, and so that causes the requirement of the skill.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I think apprenticeships frameworks and apprenticeship standards are exactly that space. So for me, it was moving from language learning as a task-based approach to work-based learning, which are framework by standards or frameworks, was really, really helpful to me. I think the second thing I got from that first half of my professional life, Saf, was an appreciation of the value of multiculturalism. And by multiculturalism, I mean race and culture. I also mean gender. I also mean just views on the world, different levels of wealth, different and prosperity and opportunity. And so by being immersed in all of these very different places, I think it changed me into the person that I became later. Because I learned an appreciation of different attitudes. So the clearest example I've got, when a lot of the countries I lived in would be referred to as developing nations, as opposed to a developed nation like Britain or Northern Europe or the United States. And that terminology is really, really powerful for me, because there's a vibrancy in the mentality of people in those developing nations. Not everyone, but there's definitely an ambitious cultural drive for people who want career and social mobility, and for employer organisations that want to succeed. And that passion and that drive and that willingness to work and contribute.
Canny Conversation Podcast Series 5 by Safaraz Ali.